Roboter, die sich so rasant bewegen. Wir sind Roboter. Wir können nicht anders. Wir müssen marschieren.
Guten Abend und herzlich willkommen im Tschechischen Zentrum Berlin. Ich freue mich sehr, dass Sie heute so zahlreich erschienen sind. Und heute ist wirklich ein spezieller Abend. Nicht nur deswegen, weil wir heute einen speziellen Gast haben. Tomáš Sedláček, herzlich willkommen. Und auch Tomáš Sacher, herzlich willkommen. Tomáš kennen Sie vielleicht schon, Tomáš Sacher. Mit ihm haben wir schon einige Debatten gemacht. Und heute würden wir gerne ein neues Format testen, wenn wir das so sagen können. Und zwar ein Abend, bei dem Tomáš Ihnen eine interessante tschechische Persönlichkeit vorstellt. Und das in einem sehr informellen, sehr nahen Rahmen. Also Sie sehen ja auch, es ist wirklich, Tomáš Sedláček ist wahrscheinlich noch wirklich größere Mengen gewöhnt, aber heute kommen Sie sehr nah dran. Sie haben die Möglichkeit, Fragen zu stellen. Sie haben darüber hinaus noch die Möglichkeit, die Ausstellung zu sehen, die wir machen, beziehungsweise die anderen Projekte, die wir machen. Und Sie haben auch die Gelegenheit, ein gutes tschechisches Bild zu bekommen. Kurz zu der Ausstellung. Das ist eine Ausstellung aus dem Werk Rudolf Valentas. Vielleicht kennen ihn einige von Ihnen. Das ist ein Tscheche, der ist dieses Jahr 85 Jahre geworden. Bekannt für seine abstrakte geometrische Kunst. Und diese Ausstellung ist das Werk von zwei jungen Kuratoren, die sich mit seinen verschwundenen Werken auseinandergesetzt haben. Und zwar sind es Rekonstruktionen von zwei Werken und zwei weitere müssen wir leider ausmachen, weil das war eine Videoprojektion und das war im Fernsehen. Aber es lohnt sich auf jeden Fall, wenn Sie das nochmal sehen wollen, kommt an einem anderen Tag, wo wir dann nicht so körpernah an den Werken in der Ausstellung sitzen. Kurz noch zu den Sponsoren. Budvar ist unser neuer Sponsor seit diesem Herbst. Wir freuen uns sehr darüber und hiermit möchte ich das doch noch erwähnen und mich bei den Sponsoren bedanken. Jetzt das Wort an Tomáš Sacher und Tomáš Sedláček nochmal herzlich willkommen. Einen schönen Abend.
So I would already switch to English, and if you want to speak Czech, then I'm sure that we will have also a chance. But
Or German.
Or German.
Or any other language.
If
you want to be understood.
I guess that it's pretty much okay. Thank you very much, Monika. Thank you that you are here. As you said, this should be kind of start maybe of a new series when we would like to bring some interesting people, and I'm really pleased to have Tomáš here as the first guest, because as I realized, at least among some people here in Berlin, he's the most famous Czech.
Among some people.
Yeah, I wouldn't specify
Especially in the brown part of Berlin.
But actually, journalists know you.
Good. That's a good sign, no?
Yeah, they like you. They like your books, and that's a good point. The books. We managed to have here the books in German, in Czech, and in English.
All the international languages.
And we have them for a fairly good price. So to say you can buy the book in the shop at least for 25 euros, here is 20.
You should really work in my marketing section. I could never say this, but you do such a great job. Yeah, you make me want to buy it.
Try to do my best. Actually, you can.
I've never read the book.
Have you read the German?
I've never read the even read the Czech version.
But you wrote it.
I wrote it, but I didn't read it.
Okay. But really, once more, the price is really good. It was
I'm spoiling your marketing
They had to
pitch.
send it from Munich.
That's still Germany, no? Last time.
Yeah, it's Germany, but anyway. And the Czech.
It's Bavaria.
It's Bavaria.
There is a tension
It's
between
Das
Bavaria.
Land.
That much I have learned from my travels to German lands.
You can sign it afterwards. That's something.
That's
So
I
the
can-
book is actually much more than 20 euros with yours.
I have a special pen for it.
It's Lamy, it's a German company.
It's a German company. I bought this in Munich at the airport.
But really, the books. And we have both. The newer one is just for 10 euros, so it's really cool. The topic.
That's a very
we will actually, we made it in this space, despite of the exhibition, and we are thinking how to shape it. Usually it's in there, but I guess it's really nice. It's quite pleasant.
You shouldn't say despite the exhibition, but you should say exactly because.
Thanks to the exhibition.
it sounds much
And
better.
you can actually then learn more about it. It's pretty interesting. But I just want to say that there is also something what should grab your attention, and that's the
PowerPoint. Wow.
I mean, it's not a real presentation. I just grabbed some pictures, some maps you will see. But also to show the topic,
Oh, nice.
which we would use as the beginning point. And it's obvious we should start with that. It's 25 years since the break, since the revolution in the Czechs, since the Mauerfall, the wall in Germany, and all the people talk about it. So I just thought that we should talk about it.
So it's still a topic here.
Yeah.
That's first good news.
Yeah, we have a topic. But actually then there are also other topics. But with the travel we would start. And you will soon understand why. So this is Germany. And this is the GDP per person. And the red zone is actually the Eastern Germany, or once was the Eastern Germany. The blue zone is the Western. This is the Europe. And the red zone is once the Eastern Europe, and the green zone and yellow and this nicer zone is actually the West. And this picture is not from 1989, when it was the break. It's a bit later. It's already 12 years later. It's 2001. The next picture is 2007. It seems pretty the same. And the last picture is not so detailed, but it's actually still the same. It's 2013. It's now. And when I've seen the pictures, I thought that it would be nice to talk about the economics of the East and the West, and what actually happened. Because as we see, it seems pretty much the same 25 years afterwards. But we feel, of course, that our lives are different. We can at least travel, we can live abroad, we can marry beautiful German girls, like that one, my wife. And we can actually say that...
Which one, so that I don't look at all
the second one in the second row.
Okay, perfect. That was the prettiest.
And actually the Wohlstand in Germany, so how rich we are. Some other charts and tables show that it's pretty much better, but still this division. And I thought that you could explain why in 3 sentences.
There's a huge difference between the slide you showed before and the slide that you now carry on, because because you see here Germany and Finland got much nastier color. It was nicely pink, and now it's disturbingly green.
Right.
I think there's the biggest difference.
Yeah, you're right. So it's the Finland the keynote.
Yeah. Finland.
But actually the Finland, I'm sorry that we jumped to Finland, but
That's Sweden.
I remember that the Finland and actually the Sweden, there was kind of a magical word in the Czech. So I've worked for 7 years as an economic journalist in respect. And there was actually a moment when we were writing some article when we would say, okay, so let's look how does it work in Sweden or in Finland, of course also in Germany. But there was the moment how to compare where does it work actually, not like in about this, division. Do you feel it? Do you still feel that we both come from the red zone, or, okay, you can say that, the orange zone? And our guests here are from the green one.
I don't know, because Prague would probably be greener, maybe.
That's true.
So
it's
you
orange.
can see and green in the middle, which is Kampa Park, which is where I live.
Okay. It's actually a pretty nice place.
Yeah, it's a pretty nice place and it's green. So it's very difficult for me, of course, as a very proud Prager.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. I'm still missing Prague and we go there.
To be able to go there. But we have much more summer houses than you do, for example. Is it common for a typical mid-income German family to have a secondary residence?
No.
So in Czech Republic, if you don't have a secondary residence, you will fall under the category of socially deprived family. So, this is one of the problems with sort of...
I feel much better now.
Yeah. Exactly, there you go. But you only have one.
Yeah, I feel better.
Because you married a German person. Because if you married a Czech person, you would have two summer houses. Sorry, you must have more chances. Summer house. It's not very compliment to you.
The garden. We have the garden.
Go, so you see, on which you sometimes live.
Yeah.
The bad days.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, but of course, on the average, there is this somewhat of a divide. But what's interesting is the inspiration, sort of the gravitoid zone, because we, in the beginning, being the very proud Czechs, we were inspired by nobody else but ourselves. In the beginning, that was the idea that we do the privatization and the whole capitalization and democratization in our own way, the Czech way. It was even called the third Czech way, and la-di-da-di-da-di-da-di-da.
How to get to the green zone.
Yeah. So our sort of dose of inspiration lasted for some, let's say, five years in the beginning, and then we started looking for inspiration outside. We realized that we're not the only country in the world, nor are we the most American country in the world. Which, living between Germany and Russia, is surprising that it took us so long to realize. But then we had, for a little while, we had this European inspiration. We just wanted to be a part of Europe. Which again, it was interesting. I was just asked by radio what went wrong during the transformation process. And I thought, well, in the early 90s, this is what most Czechs criticized as can I use the mishandled, or how we now are allowed to say in Czech Republic, skurvený. Privatization.
Fucked up.
Yeah. For lack of a better word, we're very rich language when it comes to these. Never mind. The bad things that happened in the Czech Republic, in my opinion, were not the ones that happened in the 90s, because we did a lot of things wrong, but we're moving. The whole country was alive, it was vibrant, things were happening wrong, but things were happening. In my thinking, what started going tragically wrong in the Czech Republic, philosophically wrong, directionally wrong, absolutely ontologically, axiomatically wrong.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah. That is what started happening around the break of the millennium, where suddenly there became very strong voices that started being inspired for reasons unknown back by Russia. And it was this Klaus's,
the Czech president?
Yeah, the former Czech president.
If you don't know him, doesn't matter, forget it.
It's better that way.
Yeah.
And,
he's already gone.
Yeah, but still kicking. Anyway, so there was this very strong. The Czech Republic halted. We became the first members of the EU, first members of OECD, first member of NATO, and we were proudly walking westwards. And then around 2003-04, this halt came about and Czech Republic stopped moving. And now you see this sort of a boomerang inspiration by East, which is somewhere where we always wanted to go from. And it's a very curious thing, and I don't want to talk about Czech politics right now because it's not even worth it, but our previous president is doing exactly the same thing like the current president, and the Prime Minister, Nečas, is doing the same thing like the current one, which is doubting this thing called Europe, doubting this thing called, Western, even making fun of things like democracy, etc., being extremely vocal reproduction agent of Russian propaganda or Chinese propaganda. This, to me, is what went wrong in the Czech transformation process, because one of the things, and here I think the problem is similar with Czech Republic and with Europe, we are taking, when I say the word transition or transformation, most people will immediately think of economic transition and transformation, and that's what the transition in Czech Republic was reduced to, unfortunately. We never really talked about political, cultural, democratical, legislative, educational, healthcare, pensions, blah, blah, blah. That reform was never part of the transition. The transition was very strictly economic. Same thing, as I noted earlier, like we have with European integration. When I say European integration, most people immediately connect that with the economic. For quite curious, because this is not a good reason to establish a union. Which is a pity, because we Europeans here have much more to say to the world than economy. This is not our, I would say, top niche market. And other unions, such as American Union or Chinese or Japanese or even Russia, they were all put together by a higher idea, human rights and freedom and brotherhood and solidarity, like the French. And I think partly because European integration was so economically successful, we have sort of focused all the propaganda or ideology in the area of economics. So in other words, talking from a position of a finance person or a banker, we didn't do our ideological diversification very well. We've put all our eggs into, all the European eggs and the meaning of European integration, into economic integration merely. That is why I think the reason when the economy of the EU stopped going so well, people immediately started questioning the very idea of European integration, which is a problem when you put too much of your ideology in one spot. So in America, where you have the crises, and it was the same in the 20s, the crises started in the United States of America. It was much deeper there. We thought it would never spread to Europe, but it did. But in America, you may notice, the economic crisis was kept within the economic discourse, if you will. So no American ever thought to himself, well, there is an economic crisis, so it must be the fault of the common currency called dollar. Or, California's bankrupt, well, let's help California by kicking her out of the dollar zone so that she can devaluate. Well, this was an idea that actually nobody had.
But they had been actually pretty much longer together. If we take those 25 years,
Yeah.
it's not even the EU time.
Yeah.
It's
that, of course.
2004,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
10 years.
It's right. It's also, I think, one of the reasons why everybody was blaming euro was exactly because it was a novelty. So what happened new in the last 10 years? Oh, it's euro, so it must be euro's fault. So from that perspective, I understand it too. But even in the 20s in America, that crisis didn't lead to any war in the United States of America, and they didn't actually start killing more minorities. They just continued with the same rate of killings. But here, it resulted in a completely hate, kill all, half Europe against another half of Europe. So it's not true what is generally believed, especially by us Europeans, that we Europeans are the cultured, the more easy, while the Americans are so, manic about everything and much more business oriented, and, priority is money. No, this is exactly the reverse. We Europeans overact hysterically to economic. Sorry.
It was too much.
It's my new I have inbuilt censorship in.
It's an embassy building.
It's an embassy.
You
should have told me before, so I'll just be silent. Okay. So
last time we made an interview together, you were talking about why does the Europe hold together, or why it should, or it's meant to hold together. And you said an interesting point that in the 20th century there was actually this this lust for land. That was actually the point of the Second World War. And what happened in the Europe was that the integrated Europe, the connected Europe, actually lost the borders. There doesn't have to be such a lust for land. There is now a lust for money, lust for economical success. But if you see the map now, it still says that this is still Hungary somehow.
Yeah, but I must also say, look at Portugal. Look at southern Italy. Look at this is a weird place with Finland there. And look at Ireland, and look at even some western parts of the United Kingdom.
And this is not, we see the Portugal is
so
that's not.
We're not in the region of brown, which is nice. We are in the region of, but this was, in a way,
does this still work? This idea that the rich, the money will hold us, or let's say to have enough, that we will someday be all at least yellow and without borders together.
Yeah, well, it depends exactly. This is exactly my point. This is exactly what you measure determines how you think. So if we measure GDP, and if you think,
this is GDP per person.
Now just think of why do we actually have this map, and why do we still have borders there? This to me is GDP, which is displayed there in very colorful colors. GDP is, in one way, a remnant of nationalism.
Okay.
Because we calculate GDP, Czech Republic versus Germany, Germany versus France, France versus UK, UK versus Ireland, Ireland versus some other small country. And if we measured GDP, let's imagine, regionally, the painting would be completely different. Some regions of Greece are richer than some regions of Germany. So the discourse wouldn't be, Germany against Greece, the very hard-working German, against. This was the impression that you got when you were reading Financial Times. In between the lines, this was, bluntly clear. The lazy Greeks. But I also think I have this personal thing. We have this impression about lazy Greeks. You know what? Why? Because that's where we go for holidays. Not too many people go for leisure holidays, with all due respect, to Germany. So a casual visitor gets the working type sort of German. So that also, I think, is a little bit sort of the image is tilted there. But anyway, if we measure GDP not according to these borders that are results of wars, by the way, there is no ideology behind this. Those white lines are a result of blood and these things that we shoot into each other. Why? And so we fetishize, in one point, we fetishize the idea of growth of a nation geographically. That was a European fetish 2 generations ago. We would literally kill each other over
just to get bigger
land. Today it's a debt fetish. If I offered half of Poland to you, I don't care. Why? We have enough of our own problems. It wouldn't even cross your mind to take half of Poland.
Which half?
Well, any half. It's big enough for all of us. You can have as many halves as you want. So that no longer is a fetish. And we laugh about it. Thank God we laugh about this. 2 generations ago, this would not be a very good joke. And we literally killed each other, not like we kill each other with arguments. We shot iron things into the flesh of somebody else who was young, charming, and
this is now over because of...
This is over because I think this was the genius of the founding fathers of the European Union. They managed to swap the fetish of geographical growth for a fetish of economical growth. But the growth growth there remains. So this is, in a way, a result of Second World War nationalism. If we measured GDP regionally, it would not look this way. And even more radically, if I may, let's just imagine that historically, for accidents and reasons, that now we have GDP measured nationally, it would have been a little different in the history, and we would have measured GDP of, I don't know, women versus men. Yeah, so the map would look completely differently. You wouldn't even use a map. And the discourse would be, I don't know, in the year 2013, quarter to quarter, the GDP of women went up by 4.2%, while the GDP of males went down by 2.4% of GDP. Now, the discourse. Should the hard-working women be fiscally helping the always lazy men?
Why not?
There would be, you know, how shall we institutionally, you know, invoke men to sort of do something else than watch football? That would be the discourse, not should we break down Europe because Greece somewhere there. I mean, to me, the Greek, this map is also, okay, this map isn't a very good image of that, but if we went more into the details of years, you would see that what they have now in Greece isn't some sort of inherited sin, depression, like you read in the newspapers, the always lazy Greeks and blah, 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 blah. But it's in fact a merry-go-round crisis. If you recall, and you will recall better than I, what now? 10 years ago, Germany was the sick man of Europe. This is not so long time ago. Now, then it was, in 93, it was Sweden. In 90, it was Finland. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, there was like 28% youth unemployment in Finland. And then there was a rubber, you know, that Nokia.
They made gummi.
They made rubber.
Yeah.
They made Holinki.
Gummistiefel.
Rubber boots.
Yeah.
Wellies, right, yes. I had them when I was a small boy, because I grew up in Finland, yeah, I had Nokia wellies. I wouldn't fit in anymore, but it was definitely Nokia.
And with some wires.
No, it was completely wire-free. It was wireless. So, yeah, and then somebody, who would have thought that Finland would, you know, make such an impressive, once upon a time, impression in the IT world. Then it was, United Kingdom was the sick man of Europe before Thatcher sort of rounded up. Czech Republic, the whole region was a sick region in the early 90s. There was so much, I mean, I completely understand why Europe was so careful in letting such a huge new ethnic identity, because this is something that was also not so often commented, but by Czech, Poland, Slovak, and Slovenian accession into the European and the Estonia, etc., you were allowing a new Slavic race, or it was a completely new entity for you, and I completely understand the well, you know, really. So it's a crisis that goes around.
So you say that you can't say lazy Greeks, not even lazy.
Yeah, because you would have to say 10 years ago, you would have to say lazy Germany or lazy Czech Republic or lazy Finland.
I mean, you can't say lazy in slow Eastern Europe yet either.
Yeah.
It's just some condition of the time.
Yeah. Ireland was a sick man of Europe, what now, 4 years ago. And Irish are not exactly lazy, nor are Japanese. I mean, by this definition, Japan is a sick man of Japan in the last 30 years. And you can't really say that Japanese people are lazy or undereducated or undermotivated or under-technologized.
This type of this, when I read all the articles about this anniversary, 25 years after the break, I found many stereotypes, many ideas about how the Eastern Europeans are. And so, even in Germany, that's the next picture. So you see that still, again, yeah, it's an income for the Germans. So in the East, it's actually it's obvious.
Look at Hamburg.
Yeah, they have Exactly. And the journalists and scientists, they were talking about why are there some other reason next to this history and so on. And some of them were talking in the way like you, not so interestingly, but they were also trying to stop those stereotypes. But some of them were actually evaluating the whole East somehow. And I was trying to find some of the often used characteristics and too interesting. I found those two, for me personally, interesting. Too much passivity and lack of creativity.
Says who? Say the German about.
Said some people in the article. It's not representative. It's just that came to me like interesting.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But it could be worse. You could be active idiots. Just imagine creative activists.
Okay.
Creative idiots. Okay. That's the dangerous part. I mean, if you have lazy bums, let them live.
But I think that comes through. And I was looking through the maps and the graphs, and I found a few. I was actually a bit, puzzled, confused what to say. Also, so look at the next one. This is just Germany. I didn't want it to talk. Sorry about it. I didn't want it to talk always about the Czechs. So now about the Germans.
So they look more on TV.
So the more you watch the TV, the more yellow you are. So
I've noticed.
We talk about passivity. I remind. So
and then you turn green.
Maybe. Then I've seen that. You know what it is? It's how often you would find the name Roni in the country. Roni.
Meaning what?
Meaning that there are too many Ronis in the East. So the Easterns are not creative.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay.
So you know what it was the.
It means your parents were not creative when they were creating.
It's now how many Facebook users carry the name Roni? So many. It's the source is Die Zeit. So really. But then I realized, what is one of the mostly used names in the Czechs? It's Tomáš. And then I realized...
That is ridiculous. You can see.
Tomáš. No.
I thought it was Honza.
No, Honza is also quite often.
But Tomáš is more frequent than Honza.
Yeah, and Martin is the assistant and Honza is at the back by the books.
Any Tomášes here?
Yeah.
So we're the only two.
Then those are Ronis.
Fair enough. How do you call girls here?
I don't know.
What's a very common German name for a girl?
The mothers are more creative. Okay.
So wait, the father gets the name the son and the mother gets the name the daughter? Is that the implication? I've tried that all my life.
And she's always right. So
to be more creative with girls than with boys.
Yeah. But actually, this was somehow attacking me. Those stereotypes that they are passive and not creative. And then there was one more graphic. So it's about how many people have the guns. So you see that the Westies have all the guns. So maybe they are more active and creative. It's how I. Hey, those are just excuses. I mean, it doesn't say.
I mean, that's not.
But does not. I mean, that's just the question. But is it like that? I mean, are we somehow passive? Are we not creative enough? I don't know. There are so many startups now in the Czechs. There are so many young people who want to go abroad to be active. Look at you. You are.
Yeah, look at me.
You are young.
A lost young intellectual
active,
who earns his living by drinking beer at public events.
Oops.
Yeah, of course. I know. I think, well, I don't know. I think we are not creating very much. No. We are a nation that's consistently inconsistent. Okay? I would, in fact, and I don't mean this in any bad way because I'm a very proud Czech. I think we are a great nation. I mean, anywhere in the world you drop the name Czech Republic and people think of Velvet Revolution, Havel, Kundera, Kafka, beer, Skoda car, thank you, Prague, sports, architecture. I mean, we do have, I mean, you can't really, I'm half Slovak. You can't say this about Slovak Republic. Because what comes to your mind when you say Slovak Republic? I'm sure somebody can think of something. Tatry, yeah, okay. Yeah. And Moze. Somebody said the sea. Oh, Duce, okay. Fair enough. But that's, okay, but you know what I mean. And I don't mean this in any bad way. As I said, I'm half Slovak, so I can make fun of that. So, what was my point? My point was that I come
the Czechs are great.
That I come from. I actually am a very, very, very proud Czech. But if I summarized this once for Washington Post, they were asking me about the nature of Czechs, what's the best way to do it. And I said, in order for the world to understand what Czech Republic is, you need to know two things. First of all, we were always called Bohemia. That sort of explains a lot. And secondly, we are a nation of hobbits. And hobbits is a very nice sort of a tribe that lives in the bottom of Bag End. We are oblivious to the way things go around us. We love our beer, we love our kitchen, we are very merry and jolly folk. We don't go to wars, we simply, and two things you need to know about hobbits. First of all, do not leave your chata, because once you leave it, very curious things will start happening. This is a direct quote from Lord of the Rings, number 1. And the second thing you need to know about hobbits is that their key principle is do not meddle in the affairs of wizards. Yeah, exactly. So, this is a nice way of actually, for me, to think about Czech. But, of course, once in a while we produce Frodo. Once in a while we produce somebody who's actually able to bear the ring that Gandalf and Galadriel, even Gimli or Legolas would never even touch. Because they knew they would not be able to bear the burden of. So, very respectable nation. You could see this wonderfully because, sorry to say, Czech Republic never decided anything about anybody else except for ourselves. The first time we got the question from one of the great wizards, which happened to be America, they asked us, 6 years ago, hey, could we build this anti-missile shield in your backyard, dear hobbits? Could we build it in Hobbiton? And this was the only and first time when Czech, because we talk about sovereignty all the time, and so this was the only time in history, please, those of you who are historians, correct me, but I don't think the world ever asked the Czech Republic about anything. Except, do you want to join OECD? Do you want to join NATO? Do you want to join European Union? But never anything that actually concerned somebody else than us. Now come the American wizard and said, can I build this thing? And we Czechs go, ask Europe, ask NATO. They even sent an official letter, for crying out loud, to OECD, which is an organization for economic cooperation with countries.
Does it bring some money?
Yeah. Can we build this thing in our backyard? And everybody, yeah, it's your country. You are, what was the word? Sovereign. So if you want to, duh. If you don't want to, yet. It's as easy as that. And I mean, this was, for 2 years, we were like, one wizard wants to do magic with us and the other doesn't. And now, oh my God, what do we do? Do we belong to Russia? Do we belong to America? So this was, to me, a wonderful manifestation of this sort of hobbit-like character, which of course results in us being extremely unimpressive when it comes to novelties. In Czech Republic, politically and economically speaking, nothing interesting happened in the last 15 years.
But we have Frodos.
We do have Frodos, yes. We do have.
Who's the biggest Frodo?
For me, well, of course, Václav Havel.
You know the Frodo Havel.
Yeah.
I guess all the people do. But it seems that the Czechs doesn't really see him clearly.
Yeah, well, how popular was Frodo in Hobbiton?
Oh, that's true. That's true.
He was a weirdo that, magically disappeared on his birthday.
So is it the fate of the outstanding, some supreme Czechs that they won't find the nice welcome in the Czechs and they will be famous just abroad? Because there are many cases like that. The people who went abroad and become famous, and always when they come back to the Czechs are somehow, oh, you come now from the world and you will tell us what to do.
Yeah. This already happened to this guy.
Has it happened to you also?
No, it already happened to this guy a long time ago. What was his name? JJ. Jesus. Didn't he say the thing when he came back to Nazareth? That, there is no such thing as a prophet back in his hometown. So, in this respect, I suppose that explains it in one way. Secondly, in my mind, there is this sort of great battle, if you want to talk about Czech Republic, between people with ideals versus professional cynics, which is a great example of this. Havel, who was an idealist, dreamer, was not a cynic, and Klaus and Zeman, who have won their positions exactly because they were professionally cynical. And that is the dividing line in if you want me to summarize the clash in one sentence, then I would use idealism versus professional cynicism.
So you are studying many stories from the history. Now with the Jesus, it was quite typical for you to use many unexpected examples in your books.
And funny ones also.
And funny ones. And you are trying to explain the economics in other ways. You also mentioned now that there would be a way how to measure our money in another way than the GDP. You mentioned also some studies. Just a few pictures, I will then let this machine go. But this is really a different picture. This is the report that talks about social progress. And it looks better now. It's not such a sharp division. I would say that the Russia could be actually a bit darker now at the moment. It's so grey or not such a green. But it's not such a sharp division. This is the social progress. So this is it. And before that, this was the happiness. That was the happiness. So there's not such a sharp line. Yeah, you still see that the West is a bit more happy, but not such a terrible difference.
But it's a very shallow happiness,
Yeah?
Our happiness is a sad one.
Mm-hmm. It's like a nostalgia.
Yeah. This is how Russians, I understand, are happy. Is when. If you compare this to America, in all the researches when you do, so I'm not much of a sociologist, but my wife is. If you ask Americans, are you happy with America? They would all produce a Captain America reply and beat up somebody just to prove that.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. For America, and let's just beat up somebody so that I prove my point. Yeah. Whereas in Europe, so in other words, in America, it's a little bit like asking the Captain America, how do you like America? The answer is clear. In Europe, it's like asking Franz Kafka, how do you like Europe? And we are much closer to Kafka joy, or more Thomas and Bendy than we are to Captain America. I mean, can you imagine that we Europeans shoot a movie that's going to be called Captain Europe? I mean, excuse me, that would not fly. I mean, and by the way, now that I mentioned this, it was just in the movies showing Captain America #2. Did you, by the way, notice that Captain America was a perfect Übermensch? Blonde, blue hair, tall, muscly, and solving the whole problem of the world with a fist. So it was very interesting, these two ideologies, the European ideology of Übermensch hatred, was fought back in America by the ideology. You know how you translate Übermensch into English? Superman. And the first issue of Superman, the first cartoon, came out in 1936. So, you know, this American suppression of the belief in right was morphosized in fictionizing of this Übermensch Superman who can solve the problems of the world very quickly with a fist. So anyway, that's just to say that these ideologies are actually quite interestingly connected in a way. Sorry?
But Superman has black hair.
Yeah, but Captain America. Captain America, this is why I used Captain America rather than Superman. That he was a superior race, in a way, fighting, helping us pure human beings overcome the evil that's within us. But, yeah, so this is the comparison between America and Zla. By the way, did you notice that the biggest problem of Europe is Europeans? And the only person who is dissatisfied with Europe are Europeans. Many people are afraid of America. There is this anti-Americanism, don't have to go into that, whether it's clever or stupid, but it's a very strong movement. But it's usually outside of America. There's a lot of people who fear China, but it's usually not the Chinese. And there's a lot of people who fear the Russia, but it's not the Russians. And there's a lot of people that fear Europe, and it's only Europeans.
That's positive. We don't have
Yeah, America doesn't really fear Europe. Russia never fears Europe, China. I mean, we're not scary to anybody. Just imagine that in America, you would have a political movement that would be systematically focused on anti-Americanism. I mean, even the most strong critiques of America, such as was this philosopher linguist Noam Chomsky, he would never say that he's anti-American. He would say, "I love, but I hate Bush and whatever." In Russia, even impossible to imagine that there would be somebody critical of Russia getting into the parliament alone, or in China, unimaginable. But Europe happens to be the only superpower, or the only power that fears itself the most. So to everybody else, we are beautiful, but not to ourselves, which is better than the other way around.
But what to do with it? I mean, the European Commission has even tried to announce a competition for a new European narrative.
Yeah.
To find a new story about the Europe, which would unite the countries together. Did it work?
Well, I was part of that Barroso Commission, and I realized very quickly that to talk about meaning of Europe is almost as difficult like to talk about meaning of life. If I point at you and I ask you, what's your meaning in life, and it's your life, you will probably give me a sort of an answer. Yeah? It's never really clear for oneself, what is my meaning, purpose, telos, the reason of creation or whatever, why am I here? So it was also so difficult to do that for Europe, but we must also realize, so what is the gap between Europe and Europe? I mean, what is it that we Europeans lack about ourselves, in a way? And in one way, you can see also, again, similar criticism for capitalism as you see towards European Union. A lot of people criticize capitalism, rightfully, or that's for not having a soul. It's sort of a dead machine, it's a zombie thing, and the machines are working, but the meaning is gone, and we don't know why we toil for it. So the machine remained, the spirit is gone. Isn't that very often the same when you hear about European Union? Okay, so it's distant from the people, the institutions are there, but they are dead and uninteresting and boring and full of bureaucracy. Da-di-da-di-da-di-da. We want Europe to be more European, whatever that means, and we want capitalism to be less capitalistic. Both in order for us to give it a heart. Now, of course, trying to think about this question subversively, not to repeat the cliches that we've all read, is that, well, in the most subversive way of answering this question of our Western dissatisfaction with the West, to put it bluntly, what if, in the most bizarre of theories, what if capitalism and European Union has already fulfilled its goal? To put it very stupidly and bluntly, with the European goal, that's a little bit easier because we know that the founding fathers, and this is a cliche that you all heard, we put together European institutions, European integration, because of peace and through trade. So the ultimate objective of European integration was peace, and the secondary operational diminishing mediator sort of secondary objective was trade. So I now can, after all these years, sit down and say, okay, peace. Do we have peace in European Union? Yes, we do. That's a 0-1 category. You either have peace or war. Within the borders of European Union, we've had peace, longest ever by multiples. So, mission accomplished. Question number 2, do we have trade? Yes. North of Finland is trading with the south of Greece at ease that was absolutely unprecedented and absolutely they even have the same currency. You produce something in Lapland, in the north of Finland, and you pack it and you send it to Greece. 15 years ago, tariffs, different bureaucracies, oh my God, exchange rates. Nobody ever thought that Portugal would trade with Czech Republic, Finland with ease. So we trade. Ticked off. So it's like when you're going to your grandmother, you take a car, but there is only so far that you can go with a car. At one point, sooner or later, you have to stop the car, get out of the car, and walk. And maybe we are in this situation, we're driving a car that was built to bring us peace and trade. It did bring us peace and trade, and we're still sort of, stepping on the gas saying, all right now, the stairs, come on, baby. So it's a little bit like maybe now that maybe even more provocative and saying, how about capitalism there? I likened the two images. What is the role of capitalism? There the question is a little bit more complicated because we never did give ourselves a goal of what is the home run of capitalism. In fact, ironically, because in the beginning when economics was still an interesting science or field, the idea was when will we and how will we reach what they call the stationary state. In other words, we will grow now for some time, but that's not interesting. What interests me, from Smith to everybody, John Stuart Mill, Thomas Malthus, Marx, Keynes, Schumpeter. What interested them was the final stage, to which, if the system continues the way it does, what will it converge to? Will it be a just society, like Smith, for example, thought, or will it be an unjust society, such as Thomas Malthus? Thomas Malthus' prophecy was, as you all know, there will be a very short class of extremely rich people, and the rest, the working proletariat. If you increase their living standards, if you increase their wages, these people will multiply, and there will be more of working people, thus the wages will go down again. So there's, well, philosophically speaking, this was the ultimate vision of Thomas Malthus. So that's what inspired Marx, together with others, to do a revolution, because if that's the natural way the economy is leading us, we don't want to end up in that extreme disparity. We have to do a revolution. Blah, blah, blah. This is no need to go to the history of economic thought. What's important is that the fathers didn't care about the growth thing. They cared about the zero, the stationary thing, which, of course, no need to say, is completely dwarfed today. We have no idea where we're going, but we're compensating for that by speeding up, which is exactly, when you get lost, speed up.
It seems to be one of the most famous or popular ways of thinking. If we take Thomas Piketty, he became really a star with his book where he's talking about this. That there are more rich people on the top than more poor.
Yeah.
But you don't agree that this is the point where capitalism leads?
Well, okay, let me actually even answer that very difficult question to answer. Let me say, for a while, this is, don't catch me here by a word, it's a work in progress definition, not even a definition. But what if the role of capitalism was to make sure that the majority of the population does not have to spend the majority of its mental capacity thinking about their ability to survive? In other words, if you take your kids to movies twice in a month, you don't have to worry at the end of that month that you'll have nothing to eat. So let's just take for a while that is the home run of capitalism. If that would be so that people can come to debates like this, yeah, completely useless, but fun. Yeah. This is a great leisure. This is a luxury that not even the nobles 100 years ago had here. This is absolutely fascinating that you bring somebody from Czech Republic on a horse just to have an evening with him. But nevertheless, let's just imagine that if that would be the home run of capitalism, then for majority of European countries, for a vast majority of population, again, I'm sorry to say, mission accomplished. Capitalism never, ever, I don't think there was a single economist, again, please correct me if I'm wrong, who ever said that it's supposed to be fair. That's not we don't do this. Our thing is, we get food and money for people so that they can worry about whether Han Solo is going to fall in love with Princess Leia. Okay? So I was giving this example in Austria where they have cows. And so I thought, well, isn't this a little bit, again, in a subversive imagery, like we're milking a cow, and the cow is no longer giving us milk, and we start hitting the cow, why aren't you giving us this milk? And the cow magically opens her mouth and says, but why are you beating me? Look, you have 12 baskets full of milk. 2 baskets are rotting, 1 basket is leaking, that basket isn't even clear. And you don't even care. The only thing you care that I'm not giving, I've already given you all my milk. Stop milking me and enjoy. So if that subversive, completely opposite image of compared to what's the classical reading of the situation is, then we, and here I'm coming back to, again, my favorite book, then we need new baskets for the new wine. I mean, the mission could be, let's just admit for just the sake of a debate for 5 minutes, that the mission is accomplished. And we know from psychiatry or psychology that one of the greatest sources of depression is when you actually accomplish your dream. You get married, for example. Or you finally get that job that you always wanted. For the first 2 weeks you're like, yeah, and then 3rd week is like, I've just lost my dream because it happened. And that very often is a reason, it's a starting period, a starting point, tipping point for many people who suffer from this, for depression. So it could, of course, again, just in theory, it could also be that this European depression is that it is coming from accomplishing our goals. We don't know what next.
So if I understand it well, you would advise to work with the milk.
Yeah.
To make the cheese.
Yeah.
What is the cheese?
Yeah.
What is the cheese?
It's just
a better environmentally friendly society. I mean,
yeah. For example, we are now rich enough. Everybody already has an iPod. Okay, hallelujah. And now let's try and do something else with it as well. You can see this quite nicely in Japan, if I may again. Only one. There are many reasons to explain why Japan is not growing, but one of those reasons, quite a common one you will hear among analysts, is that they've hit the golden ceiling, so to speak. Yeah, so everybody already has 2 iPods and 2 cars, and you don't really want a third iPod. Why? You don't want a third car, because, I mean, the marginal trouble with having a third car is much less than the utility that you do. I mean, even in theory, you can. What is interesting to me about this theory is, why do we read this or interpret this as bad news? This should be a hallelujah moment. But no, we are depressed because everybody already has everything and nobody wants any more of it. So we are, stuck at a no growth level, and that's why I say this is not a crisis of capitalism proper. This is a crisis of what I call growth capitalism. Now, that's a completely different philosophy, completely different mentality. Capitalism is, I mean, if it grew, there wouldn't be a problem. But the only problem at the end of the day is that it's not growing, which is exactly happening in Japan. We read this as a problem that everybody's already happy. Exactly because we can't GDP grow. And that's funny, is there is this beautiful movie called Le Grand Bouffe. It's a French movie, and thus it's also very disturbing. All French movies are very disturbing. This movie, 7 gluttonists get together and they die out of overeating and all other manly pleasures. During communism in Czech Republic, so 26 years ago, we also had economic crises, but those were of different nature. We wanted sugar, but there was no sugar. There were shortages of sugar. We just couldn't get sugar. We wanted razor blades, but there were, as you can see, shortages of razor blades all along. People couldn't get, exactly like George Orwell describes it in 1984, these sort of, no razor blades. We wanted cars, but you had to wait for 3 years to get one. Now, fast forward 20 years into current, we also have these, so in other words, during communist regime, demand and supply, demand was healthy, but the supply was faltering. Today, we also have economic crises, but these crises are exactly the opposite. We have enough of sugar, but nobody wants it anymore.
A lot of cars.
We have overproduction of cars. We can produce them all right. I mean, you can get it in a day, but we just don't. So in other words, the supply is healthy, the production line is fine, but the demand is faltering. In other words, how to read this? Well, would it not be appropriate to use a similar picture like we saw in the Grand Bouffe? The economy is cooking more than it wants to eat. Naturally, this is the situation in which we are. We produce more cars than the economy can eat. Now, the third Kantian question, was soll man tun? Our solution is, let's cook more and more efficiently. Which, when you take 2 steps back, you go like, what? If the economy is producing more than it wants to eat itself, this is where the government steps in. This is the meaning of fiscal policy. The economy does not want to eat all that it produces, so the government comes in and artificially creates hunger or desire, or it stimulates, even in the sexual sense, it stimulates the libido of the economy by fiscal stimulus. So fiscal policy is a trick. It pretends that there is demand where there really is no demand. So the government consumes instead of the economy. And you can do this for a couple of years, but then it eventually leads to a collapse because it's fake. You can't fool the economy for that long. And instead of saying, well, maybe if the economy doesn't want to consume everything that it cooks, how about cooking less, maybe? I don't know.
The German companies are cooking a lot of bikes, I've realized, instead of cars now. There are quite many companies which produce bikes.
That's good.
And yeah, it works. Yeah. I asked Tomáš to come, of course, for you to have a possibility to ask. So it would be mean to talk here, just we two. So please, join us with your questions.
And answers.
And answers. How to do the cheese.
Is this, you said that they create this hunger. Is this what is happening in China with those ghost cities and everything?
Yeah. Chinese economy is extremely indebted, but you don't see it on the official statistics because they're doing something similar that we did during the 90s. The official level of Czech debt didn't grow because of bad loans in the banks. The banks were state-owned, so a company that was going to go bankrupt normally did not get a direct money injection from the government like is happening today, but it got a loan from a bank, which was state-owned. So that's similar in China. There's a huge level of indebtedness on a regional level and on the level of cantons and on the level of banks, which will surface if it is untreated in some years. So, and especially in Russia, this is the case. Russia is an extremely uninteresting, uninspiring, short-lived economy because it's merely strong because of oil. And the only reason why it's strong because of oil, because we demand it. If I was even having this debate with a diplomat of sorts in Czech Republic, I said, I think 1 year would be enough. 1 year of living without Russian gas for Europe alone would destroy or would put Russia down, would put it on its knees. Just 1 year, or maybe even half a year. It's a very fragile economy that is uninspiring. I only say this because there is a strong tendency in Czech Republic to start trading with Russia for reasons unknown. We have 4% of our exports with Russia, which is, what now, the size of Kuala Lumpur.
Almost 40 with Germany.
Yeah, 40 with Germany. It's like if you have a really good customer who takes 96% of your production and you start screwing him because he's taking too much. That's what Czech Republic is doing towards the European Union when it comes to trade. Oh, it's too much of trade, too much of our trade goes to the European Union. Oh, we have to trade back with, no, this is what we tried. Oh my God, for all 90s we tried to get rid of the dependency on Russian, whatever it was. And we were very laborsomely turning our export, our foreign trade, literally 180 degrees. And we managed, it was a miracle that we actually managed with relatively low levels of unemployment. Our unemployment in Czech Republic was never double digit. It was 8% at max. In the deepest years of transition, it was 6 or even less, 4 in the 90s. And we managed that, and this is one thing that Klaus actually has to be respected for. I really think that he did do a lot of good, also controversial work in Czech Republic, and that's what he should have. He's become a caricature of himself, an unfortunate caricature of himself. He had many good characteristics as well, but they have drowned in all his bad ones, like everybody has here in this room, surfaced out for unfortunate reasons.
He should have gone afterwards.
Yeah. This is the inability of the father figure to die. This is very well documented in psychoanalysis.
I've seen
like Darth Vader, he was supposed to die, but he refused to die. He became, from Anakin Skywalker, he became the God speculative because he refused to die. His legs, everything was cut off, but nevertheless he refused to die. Yes, sorry.
I don't have a question, I don't have an answer, I have a suggestion.
Yeah.
Just listening to you at the very beginning, when you said this Czech brutal word,
Yeah.
I just remembered the last speech of President Zeman.
Yeah.
And just realized that there was this some kind of weird connection.
That was a joke.
I know, it was a joke, but maybe, this could be just a moment where we completely stop using these words. This could be the positive impact of our president.
Yeah, I tell to my son, don't behave like the president.
Yes.
Don't speak like the president. speak like the working class, or somebody, but not.
Maybe we could just really make this a kind of protest, like kind of develop a polite language where we go back.
There's this very famous line in Patty Goes Ha Ha by Roddy Doyle, who won Pulitzer Prize for this book in 1903. And you can only be boycotted if you don't want to be boycotted. You can only boycott a person who doesn't want to be boycotted. Whereas in this case, of course, we applied this philosophy to Klaus, we ignored him. Because we don't comment on things that are not even worth commenting. And all the Prague, Czech intellectuals did this, all the writings of Hayek and Albert Bakus and all that Nazi, sorry to say, nonsense. We never even commented because, what do you say? You say that Václav Havel was a helper of Antichrist. Where do we begin with these argumentations? So you believe in Antichrist to start with. But 5 years of that, and we are discovering that now we're embracing with Russia and that Europe is really, in the popular opinion, like this. So I'm sorry to say, it never pleases me to even debate these things, but we are here in an absolute defenses. We never the pravdolastas, the truth lovers, we never start these media offenses. Cool, man, we are Czechs, let's work together and let's try and do something nice. Let's be positive about it. And it's always them who start.
But I think still we should comment on that, This is something like that would happen in Germany. You would have an incredible vague, you would have people resigning from their positions. This is the most.
In Czech Republic, all the decent people already resigned. Sorry, of course there are also decent people here, but nobody did resign. It's always again the cafeteria.
We should be positive. There are some, not all the people are resigning. You said that we should be positive.
Yeah. Resign, not as in being resigned psychologically, but they resign from their post. But maybe also resign. For example, I resigned. When it comes to Czech Republic, I resigned. Já jsem rezignoval. I no longer. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want you to be resigned. It's
maybe after today I'll start being active.
Yeah. Come on.
But you have to react. You actually have to say. Funny enough, I was here. Where is my crew from the car?
The books I've promoted already have also poetic language.
Lutzko is anyway. There she is. We've invented on the way here that we are going to establish on the 17th of November, which is the day of the revolution, an official civic movement called Pravdolastas. And it will be public.
Truth and the love.
The truth and
followers.
The idealists.
Yes. The idealists.
So of course, we will now move into offensive, and we will start making these happenings.
And we will change the name.
Yeah.
Good.
Yes.
Let's pick up another question. There in the back first.
The question, because in the beginning you said the problem of Europe is that they put they put everything in this one basket of economic growth and so on and so on. I think that first of all it's a very Czech perspective because they have always this idea that this is an economic union and it's a little bit different here.
Okay.
But apart from that, it kind of this was like the analysis. Then it disappeared a little bit what should be different or where does it go now? You suggested kind of, we could finish the European Union because it has achieved its goals, but if we don't do it, what would be the alternative?
Yeah.
And why there's still people demonstrating in Georgia and waving European flags and so on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, and sorry if of course I always unwillingly will incorporate the perspective from which one comes, but I'm not so sure that it's only a Czech perspective. I think it's quite a European perspective. The reason we have done a subject-object reversal. Peace through economy. Make peace, how is it? Make trade, do not war. Was sort of sort of a, and that's swapped now. We don't care about peace anymore. We mainly think that, but this is again, of course, my impression. I'm just trying to name something that I feel floating in the air, and that is that the reason for European integration was mainly peace and economy, but for, I would say, our generation, but then again I could be wrong, it is mainly it sort of imploded into the area of economics. And now what to do if my suggestion or if my idea with this mission accomplished is that if we want to entertain it for a little while, then what is the next step? And that is to say, I would even be very blunt in this, I'd say, well, we haven't accomplished, or no, let's be even, we've accomplished, we have Euro, we are moving forward now, what should we do more? What is the role of Europe in the world? What do we want Europe to be for Europeans? Because, by the way, this is something that very few people notice, Ukraine is in Europe. Geographically speaking, I mean, Moscow is in Europe too. So how to read the writings in the square of Ukrainians, we want to go back to Europe. In what way do we already are in Europe? So what is it that you, as European, are lacking about Europe in Europe? And we should really sit down, and this is my suggestion, to be now a little bit, and really rethink our acquis communautaire and our bindings and co-bindings, because we've already come very long with these institutions that were made in the 40s, and now let's say, okay, fine, we're done now, this is my radical suggestion, and let's change the vehicle. We've been driving a car, now we need to take a boat, we need to maybe walk. And let's sit down and say, what do we want this European Union for, etc. That we have to do that if we want to move into the direction that Angela Merkel suggests in terms of this federal Europe and so on. This debate must take place. And it will not be, I think, as useful a debate if we have it framed in, okay, what is left to do, we need to finish, whatever. It would be easier, I think this debate that we all want would be more free and useful if we say, okay, done, now. Where do we move from now?
So to federalize?
Yeah, or no, but more importantly, what is our role? What do we want to play? What do we think that we owe to the world? Do we just want to be here? So also, if we say we're good here, we just want to stay here, that's good for me. I'm happy with that. But even this whole Lisbon process, that was one of the last interesting movements that were positive movements that happened in Europe, was basically to catch and overtake America economically. I mean, come on, the Growth and Stability Pact, and even the Lisbon process or any other process, they were all mainly economic processes. I think, I'm not so sure if my understanding of this is so limited to Czech Republic only. Because we wanted to be more productive than, more efficient than America, and we used education, but not because of wisdom or education. No, this is the perversion of our times. We think education is a subset of better GDP. We think that art is a subset of better GDP. That's why this must be very much alive here in Berlin, I can imagine. This debate about creative industry, which is a word that I hate, creative industry. It doesn't even, I want to vomit creative industry. It's like entertainment industry. This is also interesting, we are a generation that needs an industry to be entertained. And the funny part of that is, it doesn't even entertain us anymore anyway.
Good, let's pick another one.
I think I approve your criticism of growth, but we are a credit-driven society, and how to change it? Because without growth, you can't repay the debt, and the debt that's the discussion in Europe is how to reduce debt, and the answer is growth. So, but everybody depends on our pensions. All depends on it. So if there's no growth, if if we don't drink the pills, we won't have good parents.
Perfect.
So I think, how would you like to change this?
So firstly, I'm not against growth. Like I'm not against sunshine. I like sunshine. All I'm saying is, not every day is sunshine. And if you live in a world where you think that every year must be GDP growth, you are a naive person. You know, sometimes, not anymore, but when I was starting with this thing in Czech Republic, many economists talked to me about I'm naive. And I said, I'm naive? Look who's talking. You believe that human beings are rational. That's naive. You believe that the economy will grow on and on every year, every month, every second, every minute, forever. That's naive. It's like building a ship that is built only for good weather. And that's a bad ship. I mean, you can't build your ship, your pension system, your healthcare and all of it. You can't build that on the assumption that it always will be sunshine and favorable winds. Which is exactly what we've done. The economy can be flat for as long as you can imagine. And it has been like that for 3,000 years. All the way from Babylonia till the end of Middle Ages, a typical household looked the same. Fireplace, stove, table, plates, and children. That was the interior. That was the interior on a lucky day. And then suddenly, I think as a civilization, we were first surprised by growth during the industrial level. We were wow, electricity, cool. And then we were accustomed to growth. Now we have become dependent on growth. And that's where I think we've been going on. So I'm not against growth. I'm very happy when it comes. But to my colleagues economists, I say, wake up and smell the coffee. If you see any growth, whistle. And it's really no use going to, and I've been to these conferences, I don't know now, 250 times, where, of course, my little bit of a sort of lay interest is in theology. So when I get bored by these debates, I do psychoanalysis in my head of what's being said. And all I hear is this sort of, I call it prayer gatherings, because very serious people with brushed teeth and ties and white shirts come to these conferences, and for 2.5 hours they pray for growth. Oh, wouldn't it be nice if we had growth? Oh, I wish we had growth. Now, was soll man tun? What shall we do? How shall we cut? What sort of cuts, what sort of sacrifices shall we do so that the gods of growth show their favorable favor? And it's like, and I'm sitting there as I say, okay, so first of all, you're praying here for growth. Did you realize? Secondly, and also interesting to study the names of the topics of the conferences. How can we help the economy? Usually is the case to grow or play back to whatever. How can we help the economy? And I'm saying, okay, so secondly, you don't have to be Freud here. The economy needs help. You are admitting it. You business people are admitting it that you need help from the government. Oh my God, isn't that very sad? Because you were the one saying, laissez-faire, laissez-passer, we clever, you stupid, let us be. And suddenly you go like, please, help us, give us money, it doesn't really matter where. Banks, highways, universities, keep it coming. Well, my second point of analysis, the economy needs help. I was always thinking that the economy is here to help. Health, art, old people, disprivileged artists. That's what I was thinking that the economy is here for. Only to learn at my early age of 27 that, we need the pensioners to help the economy. We need to cut their this and that because that's what the economy desires. It's a sacrifice it wants from the weakest of us. And the fourth analysis is, I always say this to my business people, my business friends and colleagues, like, you're grown up, stop whining. What's happening? Is somebody cutting off your leg? And don't give me this suddenly we care for the poor, which I really, really enjoy. You hear this from the most extreme Tea Party, we need to grow because of the poor. And I'm like, oh, finally, suddenly I have social feelings. This is the first time I hear you caring about the poor. But hey, it's a very expensive and very uneconomical way to care for the poor, by the way. Of course, who know, I mean, the growth is very beneficial for the poor, but it's much more beneficial for the rich now, isn't it? Because you get the money first and then maybe. But your question was different.
Who will pay the debt?
No, you said that you can't pay the debt if you're not growing. If I may, with all respect, I absolutely disagree. You can pay. I had this conference in Frankfurt at ECB a year ago, and there were very, very impressive people. Your finance minister, previous finance minister, and exactly this was the topic: how to pay back debt. And they had all these elaborate theories, and then I was the youngest, and so I had the privilege of having the last word. And I said, I'm sorry to spoil all your, fun, but the easiest way to pay back the debt is to pay back the debt. It's easier with growth, but of course, it's like saying that maybe somebody has a mortgage. It's like saying, if my income doesn't rise, it will be impossible for me to pay the mortgage. No, of course. Even I take a mortgage, but my incomes do not rise. Is it possible for me to pay back the mortgage? Yes, it's more difficult. I have to cut on my expenditure, or I have to, but it's absolutely possible to pay back debt. It's even possible to pay back debt when GDP is falling. It's more difficult, but it is possible, no problem. And in fact, to my friends on the other side of the argument, I always say, your argumentation, and I'm trying to be as high fidelity as I can. Your point of argumentation is, let's indebt the economy. Let's run deficits, so that we can jumpstart the economy, so that we can pay back our debts. This is the normal. This is what Paul Krugman uses, and this is what very, very many economists use as a defense of government deficit spending. I think I said this in the most loyal way, nobody subjected. So here comes a little pause now. We have this sentence: let's run deficits so that we can jumpstart the economy, so that we can pay back our debts. So, okay, let's be a very, very simple linguist here. Let's just take the middle of the sentence away, and what you get is, let's get indebted so that we can pay our debts more, so that we can pay our debts better. As a banker, if somebody comes to me and says, I have trouble paying back my debts, could you lend me some money? All your red lights should be blinking here. So that's my first point. My second point is, it's not about austerity, yes or no, because if that would be a debate whether we pay back our loans. I mean, it's first principle of good ethics, by the way, to pay back your loans. Because nobody can force you, like we couldn't force Greece. But it is one of the morals of economics, even though it pretends to be a moral-free science, but one of the many, many. Economics is the most moralistic religion we've ever had for like centuries, by the way. It teaches you to be egoistic. No, it doesn't teach you to be egoistic. It tells you that being egoist is absolutely normal, there's nothing to do about it. It teaches you not to care about the results of your actions, because the invisible hand of the market will take care of that. It teaches utility. It teaches, among other things, high-level ethics of you should pay back your debts. So it's not austerity, yes or no. It's, of course, austerity when. So I say, okay, fine. When do you want to pay back these debts then? Because we didn't really pay them back when we were Germany outstandingly being an exception. But we didn't pay these loans when we were growing. On the contrary, we created most of our loans in the growth period. So little bit GDP, if I may. If I take a loan of 10,000 euros, only a fool, only an absolute idiot would say that I'm 10,000 euros richer. Everybody knows the difference between owning money and owing money. It's a similar word, but it makes a lot of difference. Now, please tell me, why do we take it so when government does exactly the same step? So a government takes a loan of 3% GDP, invested into the economy so that the economy can grow. And next year, the economy grows by, let's say, 3% of GDP. Same difference. Everybody, including the MIT, Harvard, Yale, Princeton educated economists go. We are now, hallelujah, 3% richer. And like, no. So I had the suggestion, I don't have to be provocative in everything that I say. We should keep the abbreviation GDP, but it shouldn't stand for gross domestic product, as everybody is understanding, but it should read gross debt product. Because that's how Europe has grown in our civilization. We've largely grown, the economies have grown together with our debt. So we have managed to create extremely high levels of gross debt product. That's what growth has been. And against that growth, I am. I'm not against natural growth when somebody invents something and whatever. Fine, I mean, please, as much as we can. But I am against this growth, which sooner or later will lead to a collapse of the economy. So that's...
The economists don't like it, but the last part, I would like to focus on the future, on the predictions, maybe even. And I found one quotation. It's from 2009, so just right after the crisis, when some economists were thinking about what could happen with this, what could it cost to Europe. And in Forbes, there was this economist, Nouriel Roubini, who was said once that he has said already that the crisis would come and so on. And he wrote in an essay with a question, will the economic crisis split East and West in Europe? So remember the pictures we had there, split. And he wrote there, if there is a perceived lack of help, the financial crisis could deepen the divide between so-called Old Europe and New Europe and bring structural changes to the political landscape in Eastern Europe, such as strengthening the nationalist, Eurosceptic voices in Central Europe, like Czech Republic, Poland, and the pro-Russian parties in the Baltic states. If we take the fears, what is written here, nationalism, anti-Europeism, Russia in the east of Europe, we have all this. So the question in the article was, will the economic crisis split East and West in Europe? Again, could we add? So what is the answer?
No. The answer is no. I mean, if there was ever any split created, of course, by media, it was North versus South. That was only one positive benefit of the Greek crisis, was that this East-West divide was forgotten and it was South-North now. So it's, of course, again, stupid, because last time I checked, Ireland was not exactly on the south, and nor was Greenland. That also ran bankrupt. Not exactly a southern country, Greenland is now, is it? But, nevertheless, the perceived divide is north versus south, the perceived divide is no longer east versus west. And by the way, in European elections, I must say, Eastern and Central European region voted actually really nicely. We didn't vote, the whole new region in his prediction, we didn't vote any extremist, unlike the French, unlike the UK, unlike the Netherlands, unlike Sweden, unlike Finland, and etc., etc., etc. Germany's result was in the European elections, in terms of avoiding extremist parties, was actually quite similar to what we had. We actually voted very, very, very similarly there, unlike the French and others. So this is difficult to. Economic predictions in our prophecies are impossible, and half of that came true, half of that didn't come true. And if you read it carefully, read the beginning. Can you read the beginning again? I mean, just to give a fine example of how we do. If there is
a perceived lack of help.
Perceived lack of help, impossible to measure. Okay.
The financial crisis.
Not lack of help, but perceived lack of help. So there's no way you can actually deconstruct this into something that's testable, yeah.
The financial crisis could deepen. The divide between so-called,
so not really. I'm not racist, but I don't like blacks. This is what I call diet racism.
Old Europe and New Europe in quotes, and bring structural changes to the political landscape.
Oh my God, structural changes. So nobody even know. I mean, you are closer, much closer to the media. So again, please correct me if I'm wrong. But I have not heard the term East-West divide for a very long time. It's not a terminology in which we operate anymore.
Now we brought it back by
it
anniversary.
It was huge in 2009, but now the divide is. I mean, how many articles has there been?
I have two last pictures. I also wanted to show that not all the maps are divided east-west, and I found two. So it's also a bit complicated. It's not just this is a social progress, but it's not so clear. But this, for example, there is some line. It's not. It's English. It's English in Europe. So you see the Spain. There are worse than okay, but the worse than the Poles. You see. That's it. So I found just one. Sorry. But, no, there are so much. The last picture is that. Sorry, I don't have any map now. But maybe we will really look just to the wall. Like
but
that,
again, it's all your measurements are very, very, very close.
You're right. The division is much more often.
Why don't you ask how many people like Rolling Stones? Or how many people like medium well-done steaks rather than well-done steaks? There you would have the division completely. I mean, more interestingly, and yes, there is.
But in English, it's interesting. I mean,
the English is.
Some people say that English will connect Europe more and more.
I'm really happy they included the United Kingdom in that particular. That would be sad.
So let's pick up the last round of questions and. There is the first one.
You've talked about the convergence, and what is the evidence that such a complicated system actually converges to something like stationary state, not to like oscillations, square waves, any solution?
This was the hobby of the economists. They believed in this stationary state, mainly because, this is my interpretation, mainly because Adam Smith was a Stoic philosopher, in fact, deep down. Well, if you read his text, it's quite evident. And he believed in this natural harmony of things, that this balance is only temporary, and things come to some sort of natural law. This was very common during John Locke and all the other sort of natural law stationary state. So this was sort of philosophically, religiously, even if I may say so, given that there is a paradise awaiting. If you actually read, this is most interesting, I think, to read in the writings of John Maynard Keynes in Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren, which is something that I really reckon, it's 3 pages, it's really brilliant reading. And in that, John Stuart Mill says, and this was in 30s, he says, not in my lifetime, not in the lifetime of my children, but in the lifetime of our grandchildren, about 100 years from now, we soon will be there, we will become an affluent society. Economists will no longer play the role of priests, showing us the way, but they will become maintenance personnel. Something is broken, they sort of fix the tubes, but they no longer will be the architects of the society. People will stop elbowing each other for own egoistic reasons, and economic care should go where it belongs, which is a 6th or 7th priority in the importance, and the important things will become art, faith, philosophy, relationship, whatever, all the really important things in life. And he even said, and this is really quoting quite vitally John Stuart Keynes, who says, a new Adam will arise, and he will bring with him new ethics because we will no longer steal, and this paradise on earth would happen within 100 years. He wrote this in the 30s, completely incapable of imagining how much faster progress will take place, how you can talk with your mother who's in China, and these things are, robots today work in our steads, but we have no more rest than we have. This is, just imagine, this is a nice exercise. Just imagine if you didn't have this, and if you didn't have computers, and you didn't have internet, how much more you would have to work. Or to put it in other words, imagine that in 1980, 25 years ago, 1989, you would have internet and laptops. You could do your week's work in maybe a day. Now, I remember in the early years, every lawyer company had a floor full of usually female, they didn't do these sort of things those days, typists that would type contracts. You change one thing, you have to retype the whole contract. You want to send something to somebody, it took 2 weeks before it got from here to Denmark. And then 2 weeks back if that person replied on the very same day. So when you said hi, and before you heard hello, it took you a month. Today, we complain when the internet is slow. So, where did all that efficiency go? So John Stuart Mill and Keynes and everybody thought that we would invest this additional energy into leisure. So we would only, this is what Keynes predicted, he also did predictions, that it will be enough for us to work 1 or maybe 2 days in a week. And it would. If we would be happy with the level of wealth we had 25 years ago, it would suffice for us to work half a day today. But we chose, and I'm not criticizing this, I'm just saying that this is what happened. We rather chose to work our asses off in order to convert all that energy not into leisure, but into wealth. So that's my answer.
But the question, I mean, just as a mathematician, I studied analytical systems, and you said about some conversions that we can scale some level.
Yeah.
But what's the evidence of this? Why won't we just have some chaotic solution? Everything will like squares and.
Yeah, no, because those days they believe that human beings are satisfiable. This is a debate that goes all the way back to Greece. This is the point where philosophy enters mathematics, and let me finish this. This was the debate between Stoa and the hedonists. They all said they agreed on the analysis. We have this, and we desire this. A typical description of a human being. Religiously, spiritually, materially, education-wise, I am here, I want to be here. You know. They both agreed. The hedonists say, if you have this supply and your demand is here, increase your supply. In other words, have everything that you desire, and you will be a happy person. This is the program that we have followed for the last 2,000 years by and large. Increase your GDP, your wealth, so that everybody has everything that everybody wants. Very simple. The other, and we should have been a happy society. The other alternative to this was the philosophy that Stoa were argumenting. So if we agree that we desire this and we have this, the answers of hedonists was here. The answer of the Stoa was, if you desire more than you have, then cut your desires. Desire only for things that you already have, and you will be a happy person. Now, the problem with the hedonist program, which we have followed for 2,000 years, that there happened an untrivial mistake. We only now are realizing, and this is something that Adam Smith nor Keynes knew, this is quite new, that the ultimate goal of desire is not to be fulfilled, but to be multiplied. It is not the satisfaction of my desires that I want, but I want better and newer desires. That that's really the logistics, or the algorithm, if you want, of desire. Desire is not here to be satisfied, desire is here to desire. And the things that we desire today, like faster Wi-Fi, 10 years ago would, What? What is your problem? Faster what? Or Bluetooth or anything. So this, I think, is to answer a question. Adam Smith, nor Keynes, nor anybody who came up with the stationary system did not know what we know today, that desires will never do this. In other words, your supply and demand, when your supply grows, the demand doesn't stay stable, it grows exponentially with it.
And you say that we should actually cut our desires, but I want to stop you exactly at this moment.
I'm saying this is another alternative.
Because I don't want you to cut your desires. In the beginning you said that I'm like your salesman, so I should continue the role.
Yes.
You should desire for the books, which are actually
really good.
Right. And Tomáš will now sign the books if you want. So take your chance. We know the first one, The Economy of Good and Evil, for a longer time, in 2 sentences. The newer book, what lays there? What is it about?
Oh, so there is I don't know if you know David Graeber, maybe most of you do. He's this anthropologist who wrote this beautiful book on debt. So coming up within a couple of months, there should be a small book that we wrote together. So he's an extreme leftist, may I say, thinker. I am sort of not so radical. Our debate was if zombie is the economy, a body without a soul, then my recipe is to give it a soul, whereas his recipe was to kill it. And you know, from looking at horror genre, the evidence from zombies sort of speaks more to David Graeber's point, because it was very difficult to negotiate with zombies, and in not one single movie did we manage to give the soul back to the zombie. We always killed it. That was the solution. But nevertheless, this is the second book. The book that I'm writing here could be perhaps interesting for you. It's a book that I wrote with a mathematician from Oxford called David Orrell, who works in the fuzzy models predicting from the chaos models predicting weather, which you know are the most difficult sort of algorithm. Well, it's not even algorithms, sort of programs to make. And he was also an economist, so we were talking about the role of mathematics in an economic model. So that's I call it a toilet book, because it's very small. You know, you can fit it in your pocket, and it's in the form of a dialogue. Oh my God, I'm doing marketing for my own book. I'm not finished. It's a very good book. Yeah.
Take your chance. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Roboter, die sich so rasant bewegen. Wir sind Roboter. Wir können nicht anders. Wir müssen marschieren.